Yeah.
Well, it says it's going live, so you'll have to tell me.
Oh, right.
It's not showing yet. I don't know whether it's come up on Michael's thing, but it's not saying
It's just saying setting
Oh,
up.
it is now. It
Is
is
it
now.
there?
On now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Success.
Hurrah. Thank you for that.
So I think, shall we start the meeting again?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that'd be safer. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Haven't received any apologies for absence, Chair.
Thank you, Delia. Item 2, declarations of interest. Anything? No, okay. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, which was the 18th of February. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. And page 4. Okay, no comments. Okay, we'll take those as agreed. Item 4. What is it, Delia? It hasn't come up on my
Public speaking.
Item 4 is public
public.
speaking time.
right.
Public speaking time, and nobody has sent any representations or requested to make any oral representations at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Item 5.1, planning application 77 Victoria Road. Has anyone got any comments? Eamon, it's in your patch. Nothing?
No.
Okay. That's it. So item 6 we go to.
You've got
Item
Galley Hill.
5.2 Galley Hill, but actually,
Oh.
Chairman, I think a decision's been made on that today by Milton Keynes Council
Which was?
to approve it.
Oh, right, okay. What's
Approve
it,
it.
Leeds? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, 5.2, yes, thank you. Any comment? Oh, no, it doesn't matter about comments really on that.
No.
does it?
No.
Yeah,
So
really.
no comments on Victoria Road, and the second one withdrawn really because they've already decided.
Right. Item 6. Financial management information, expenditure against budget. Very early in the year. Very little expenditure on it.
I think, Chairman, if I can speak to it,
Please
it's
do.
there's even less expenditure than there would normally be at the end of May, because so many businesses are behind with their invoicing and that kind of thing is
Yeah.
happening.
Has anyone got any? Oh, Ed, sorry, missed you.
Yeah, just one question for me, and I think I've already I've asked Delia this earlier on today, so I'll just in the public forum, I just want to mention it. Just noticing general maintenance at Spotlight. According to this year we've spent 58% of our budget already. Now,
Yes.
essentially, it's stuff that's left over from maybe March, where we've been waiting for invoices and things like that. So, but I just wanted to bring that to our attention.
No, it's not that. I can tell you what it is, Councillor. We have replaced signage at Spotlight. We had no town council logos on the signage, and it needed replacing. It was quite a mess, so we have replaced it. If we run into difficulties with the maintenance budget, I mean, last year we spent very little on maintenance, we could fund that signage from the community engagement budget to just, the visibility, as it were, of the town council.
Okay. Does anyone else have a comment on item 6 to make? No.
I did send out the list of accruals so that you could see where the credits are occurring in the income. Those are all accruals from last year, which again would normally have reversed out by now, but they haven't.
Okay. Okay, that's agreed. To note, thank you. Item 7, cash and investment reconciliations. The current account Then we have the deposit account. Any comment? Deposit account reconciliation receipts and payments. Very little. Multi-pay card bank reconciliation. Any comments on that one? No. Thank you. And then petty cash bank reconciliation. Anything on that? Okay.
Could I just ask, we just get a figure? How do we know it's reconciled properly?
Well, that's the thing. We can't display the bank statements, obviously. So what normally happens is that, if you remember, we have an arrangement whereby a member of council comes in to match the reconciliation figure, the cash book figure, and the statement figure, and signs it on behalf of the council, and then reports back to the committee that they've signed it. Now, we did have just you and Councillor Graham doing that, but we have changed the banking arrangements so that we've got more signatories, and we would like to change the arrangements so that there's more variety of the people who come in and check the bank statements. I'm very happy to send you separately from this a copy of the bank statement for you to look at any time if anyone ever wants to see one. But we just need to be a little bit careful about, you know, publishing them.
I understand that. It's just that I have never checked the bank statements.
No.
That's one person, which obviously needs to be.
I think it does need to be different people. It's just that Councillor Graham has always been available to come in, and not everyone has always been available to come in. So I think we did agree that when we were having our meetings in a meeting place, that it would be easy to do it before the meeting, because obviously the physical bank statements are there. But there's no reason why we can't do it electronically. We just need to get organised to do that. So I will make a note of that.
Okay. Any other comments, anyone? Gary?
I presume I'm on voice, or do I have to?
No, you're okay.
Okay. I think it should be noted that we made some good decisions last year to put contingency in of who can actually inspect and sign, and all those proposals that were put before the Finance Committee have actually turned out to be very good contingency planning. So there were some wise moves and proposals by some of the people, like Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Hume, on the matters. So I think they should be noted that we're in a much better position with all the recommendations from the Chief Town Clerk as well, that we're now in a very difficult circumstance, but we've actually prepared very well for it. And I think that should be noted, Chair.
Okay, Gary, that's fine. Yes, we will do that. Right, we'll now go to item 8, the balance sheet to the 31st of May. We have current assets and liabilities, and they're represented by the list of items totaling 1.762 million. Any comment, any questions on that? No? Okay, thank you. Item 9, list of payments. We have 2 pages of that. Yes, 2 pages of list. Anyone got any queries, any questions that they want to raise? Anyone not happy with anything? Delia, anything at all?
I just wanted to mention that when we looked at the last list of payment at full council, there was concern about the data protection element of the payments being made, and I've looked into whether or not we can use booking references for deposits that are refunded to people who are using our premises, and unfortunately we can't do that. The system won't allow us to do that. So we are going to have to manually go through and redact the reports. There is one deposit, I think, that I missed on this one, but I don't think it leaps out. But I think there is one deposit refund on this list, but we do need to try and tighten
Good
up.
evening, Will.
Evening.
Welcome. All quiet on the baby front?
Just about, thank you. Yeah.
Right, okay. We're on to item 10 then. Transfer of earmarked funds. Sorry, earmarked reserves.
So, Chairman, I know that you and Councillor Hume have had some thoughts about the long-term reserves policy.
Yeah.
We haven't been ready to make a proposal about that for tonight's meeting, but this is the first opportunity really that the Finance Committee have had since year end to look at the reserves position and to make any recommendations about transfers from general reserve to the earmarked reserves, or the creation of any new reserves, which could then go forward to full council on the 23rd of this month.
Okay. Eamon, did you want to come in then?
No, I just lost all it just all went down. I don't know what's happened. You
Ron?
carry on.
Yeah, can you hear me okay now?
Yep, and we can see you.
And you can see me. Oh, that's good then. Yeah, didn't we get mentioned that we had too much reserves in one place last year? Last year, unless I've missed up this, or can't remember right, we was told about our reserves last year, wasn't we? We had too much in one place.
No,
Yep.
we've had to, you're right, that what we've had to do is, as part of the annual return explanation to the auditor, the external auditor, we have had to explain, send a detailed description of our reserves and why we've got our reserves where they are. But I mean, it remains for the external auditor to come back and say anything about the reserves. But our internal auditor was not concerned because of the level of earmarked reserves. But I think it is very important for the council to be sure that it is not accumulating, as I've said this many times to you before, it's important that we're not accumulating reserves for no purpose, and that the general reserve should be maintained at a level which is the minimum that is prudent and necessary.
Okay.
Chairman, I think Councillor Hume wants to speak.
Yep. Ed?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think we need to kind of set a level of where we would like general reserves to be most of the time, and if we are exceeding it, we need to be thinking about what we do with that money. But in terms of the earmarked reserves, whilst I know we discussed them last year, and I do think they're possibly helpful things. One of the two of them that jump out to me is the property and premises and repairs and maintenance reserves, and it's just actually understanding what that money's there for, and actually what do we have when we're talking about our properties. What strategy do we have in place for the next 5 years for maintenance, in terms of how we then manage those reserves, in terms of what we need, because at the moment I don't know what we actually need from those reserves for future spending.
Before I ask you to come in, just one point. If you remember, Ed, we bought a lot of computers this year, and we thought there might be a sort of a 3 to 5 year replacement program, sorry. And therefore money into the repairs and maintenance fund would be helpful towards that fund. Plus,
but
go on.
well, there is a specific IT reserve actually, which we've started building up.
Right. Well, perhaps I put it in the wrong place then, or suggested it goes in the wrong place. But anyway, I suggested so. I'll come back to you, Angela. One was the repairs and maintenance fund to overcome problems like the chapel and what have you. And I thought also we started off at your suggestion, Ed, an environment fund, and I thought that could be increased to some benefit, but possibly putting something like £50,000 into it in addition to what's there now, if we want to really be serious about doing something for the environment. Angela, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, mine was just a small comment, and it was just like the properties and premises. I think we need to move some of that towards George Street because it hasn't got anything in George Street. And I know we've been using 106 money, but that isn't never ending. There will still be a lot of maintenance to do there. And I think we need to move some to George Street.
Yeah, we can do. Or the alternative is to go to council and say that we're going to overspend that budget, and then to take the money out of that earmark reserve purposely, and go and say that before the money is actually spent.
I think that it's important to keep the reserves and the budget separate in our minds. There is some provision in the budget for George Street, but it's right that it is reliant on the Section 106 funding. So that's why it's not been included in the budget, but we will need to draw on the property and premises reserve to deal with George Street, most definitely. So whether you want to take something out of that and make a separate George Street reserve, or whether you want to keep it all in one place, I'm not sure.
Well, my suggestion would be that we would leave the money into that fund, property and premises, for the time being, and then when we know that of a project or cost that's going to come through, we then go to council and say, right, we recommend that we take it from that fund and move it whatever we need. Because I think I agree with you, Angela. I think that George Street is going to cost a lot more money than we currently allocate. But that's what the fund's there for. Anyone else want to come in?
Councillor Hume, I think.
Yeah, Ed.
So just to come back on that, I do wonder whether it would be best to have a reserve for each of our buildings, so that actually we're putting money aside for that particular, when we can either budget to put money aside for maybe a few years' time, or some of our reserves can go into that as a sinking fund maybe. Part of the reason for that is actually, I do think we just need to have a better strategy over the maintenance of our buildings and a better understanding of what future costs may well come out of that. And just, I think that's kind of a bit missing from some of our headings, and maybe some of it's in the budget, there's no doubt about that, but I think just some of that medium to longer term, I don't know whether we've got, I don't know what necessarily strategies are for the different buildings to keep them at the standards that we want to keep them at.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Ed. I'll go Delia, Gary, Ron. Delia?
Just on the maintenance, the cyclical maintenance, I think we identified when we did the services review a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, I think, that the council's cyclical maintenance of its different assets it's not well documented. And we've, as you know, we've undertaken a very large piece of work in terms of updating the asset register. We've got an IT package to deal with the assets, and the next step in that process is to do a review, an audit of each of the individual assets, with a review to setting a cyclical maintenance programme for each of the assets to inform the budgeting and precept setting and the work that we know we'll need to do. So I think Councillor Hume's absolutely right, but it is a piece of work that we are part way through.
Okay. Gary, then Ron.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to keep some flexibility with our earmark reserves. We have committed to several things, and we don't fully yet know, and it's been mentioned, even though it's pink paper type thing, it's already been aired by our colleagues, that George Street could be very unclear on how much money is going to be spent. And we've committed to other things like landscaping, etc. So we do need to keep these earmarked reserves, and I think it's going to be a very difficult job to do some very clear budgeting of how these reserves are going to be used, because we just don't have the information. So it's got to be kept very flexible.
Okay, Gary. Ron?
Yeah, because having a different budget for each building could cost a lot of unnecessary paperwork or work where you could just have the increase the property
Yep.
fund, increase the property fund, and just spike off to every building from there.
Yep. You could do it either way, Ron. Well, I mean, Delia, what is the process now that we need to, I suppose, first of all, decide what our general reserve figure is going to be. And I believe that the figure that's been mentioned is sort of 45% of our annual expenditure. Now, is that our precept, or is that our actual expenditure?
Expenditure.
Oh, right.
I think, but I'm as I said at the beginning of this item, I haven't had chance to review the reserves policy fully and to take the most up-to-date advice on reserves, and I would like to do that.
Yeah.
I think the objective of this item today was to make specific short-term recommendations to full council next week for any changes that you want to make immediately. And then we will do a larger piece of work to come back to the next finance committee with a new reserves policy, as informed by what you tell us tonight and in more informal discussions between now and the next finance meeting.
Okay.
About how we do it. If I can just make one point, I've never really understood why we've got repairs and renewals and we've got repairs, maintenance and equipment. I think we need to just clarify the names of those two reserves and be clear about what each is intended for.
You know, I've only just noticed that. Angela.
Sorry to go on. I still think if we're looking at the reserves and we've got a code for George Street, we should definitely be moving some reserves to George Street. And I also fully appreciate what Councillor Hume is saying about having some reserved funds for our other properties as well. And I think we should be building this in, and then the values will come as the work that Delia is doing comes along.
I mean, in terms of the account system, you can have whatever reserves you want and you can name them as you wish. The reason you've got, for example, improvements Aylesbury Street as a reserve is because that was a reserve at some stage. That it appears there with a 0. There was the George Street reserve previously. I mean, I can't take them off the printouts.
Yeah.
But you can. We can add new reserves, obviously.
Delia, do we know the figure? Sorry, Ethan, I'll come in a moment. Do we know the figure that we're trying to transfer from general reserves into EMR?
No, because it's a matter for you to decide what you want to do.
I realise that, but I just wondered how much we want to move. I had the feeling that it was something like 250,000.
Are you thinking about what the underspend from the previous year? Is that
yes.
what? Yes, it's in that vicinity, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Ethan.
Although some of it will have, some of it is, sorry.
Okay, Ethan.
I was just going to add that I know that I agree with the comments that have already been made about every building having its own reserve. I think in the ones in Newton Leeds were created primarily because both sets of monies come from Section 106 originally, but there's other Section 106 funds available to other areas of the community, and I think that not just now. I think we should treat all of our venues or buildings the same, but also if we are ever to be replaced, it kind of helps with everyone remembering what the money's for.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the Section 106 funds are concerned, they must be kept ring-fenced and separately. We can't muddle up the Section 106 funding. So you could find yourself in a situation which I know we've had before, where we've had 2 Newton Lees reserves, one that was a Section 106 reserve, which I think is same thing now, and one which was funds that had come from income from the old community centre, which was being held in a separate reserve because it was ring fenced for expenditure on Newton Lees. So, you know, we do have to be really careful about keeping the Section 106 money absolutely separate.
And I think that's going to cause confusion if we're not very careful, having more than one earmark reserve fund for various buildings and so on. As I say, I would prefer to leave it in one section and take it out as we need it. So, and we're not then strapped, we're not then fixed to any particular building. Buildings then get what they need rather than what's in the kitty. Look, can I make a suggestion and then have a discussion about it if you like? Can I suggest that we amalgamate the repairs and renewals fund with the repairs, maintenance and equipment fund? Because that does seem an anomaly. Amalgamate those two and then increase that fund by £50,000, have an environment fund of 50,000 and increase the IT fund by 50,000. Ed?
Broadly, I support the 50,000 for the environment. I support the merging of them. I think the increase of 50,000 for the IT is, considering what we've just spent on tablets, I think that's probably quite excessive amount this year. It's potentially maybe we put a couple, I mean, a much smaller amount, maybe 5, 10K this time.
I was thinking, Ed, of the all the computers we bought. I think it was about 17 on one there that we bought for the offices and Spotlight and so on. Was that sort of number?
I'd have to look it up to be sure, but if you remember, we moved to thin clients, so we didn't replace all the computers.
Yeah, that's right.
We just moved to the thin clients,
Okay.
and I think I'd be, you know, from my point of view, I would not be expecting large expenditure on IT in the coming year or the year after.
I'm just trying to put the money when we've got it. Right, yeah. Sorry, Angela.
So what we're just deciding here on figures that we've got no supporting evidence to say let's do it and no strategy to do it and no agreement to do it. You're just moving money, you know, whereas we have made some decisions on George Street and I think some money should go there. And I'm not saying your renewals and maintenance, yeah, that together, but just to say move 50,000, move 10, I think that's not correct to do that without backup and support for that moving of money.
Okay, Gary?
I support totally Councillor Kennedy on this. You've got to have a purpose, you've got to have a strategy before you put anything in. And also supporting the point from the town clerk, the monies for S106 have to be legally accounted to, and so that money needs to be identified and isolated. That is definitely. And I think the IT, as other people like Councillor Hume has spoken, is excessive as a contingency reserve for earmarking extra. That's far too much, £50,000. We must define the purpose and have that clear. We must have this ring fencing of legal obligations. It's quite clear that things like landscaping and George Street, we don't know how big that is, and therefore we need to keep far more flexibility in the budget, but we need to keep the audit trail. Those are the primary considerations.
Okay, can I have a proposal from someone? Ed?
I just want to say, just come back on Angela's point, actually, I tend to agree with you. I do think, though, we have set a goal to be carbon neutral as a council. The strategy is still being developed, but I do think it would be worthwhile setting aside, putting some money into reserves for that, to help us get there. The amount is, I think we can be pretty flexible on, and actually we can move it or we can adjust it if needed. But I think we would be sending quite a strong message that we are really backing that motion, despite the fact I'm saddened that we haven't progressed it in the way that I would have liked, or we would have liked. Unfortunately, the circumstances are what the circumstances are. But I do think it would be great to send a message that we are backing it, not just with just a motion, but with some money behind it as we develop that.
Sorry, Ed, what proposal is that one?
So what amount did you suggest for going to environment, or can we call it the green fund, or?
Yep.
It was 50,000.
Right, sorry, Delia, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we have got some revenue funding in the budget for the climate change, and we have called it climate change. So it might be sensible to call the reserve by the same name, or choose another name, and I'll change the name in the budget.
Well, shall we call it environment, because that covers every eventuality, I would have thought. You happy with that, Ed?
I'm not a fan of calling it environment, just really because the potential of the confusion with the devolved services that HH on in the future.
The landscaping.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, right. Well, wait a minute, Ed, so are you saying you prefer to call it climate change?
And that's, climate change, yeah.
Okay, Gary.
Second, climate change.
Right, thank you. And that's 50,000, Ed.
Yeah, I'll put that. Yeah, that's the proposal. Yeah.
Right. Repairs and maintenance. Are we agreeing that we've combined the two budgets?
I think so, but we do need to complete that piece of work.
Yep. Do we want to add any money to that fund? Bearing in mind that we're trying to reduce this general reserve, which is too high.
I'm cautious on that, because how long is a piece of, I mean, we've just done it with the other item that I've just suggested, but it's how long is a piece of string, and we're still forming potentially the strategy for the different buildings. So I'm not sure. I would refer to someone else's opinion on that.
Anyone else got another view, please?
Is this on IT?
Gary?
Thank you, Chair. I basically support Councillor Hume again on this. We don't have enough information to start making decisions to reduce the size of the contingency. We don't know the unexpected. We don't know if there's going to be other outbreaks of COVID-ID and other backlashes. I don't think we can spend without a proper strategy, and we need to keep reserves and flexible reserves, and the auditors, as long as they're happy with this, that's what we should be doing.
Right. Any member that hasn't spoken so far like to come in? Right, Nick. Can we have some proposals from someone? We've got one from Ed, 50,000 into climate change.
Well, I would see something into George Street. Still keep going.
Right. How much are you suggesting into there?
Well, we've got the one I said. I think you need about 30,000 to go across there.
Right.
So
I'll second that. Anyone else got any comments? You were saying, Gary and Ed, that the IT figure I put forward to high. Would you suggest a lower figure of, say, I don't know, 20,000? Gary?
I'm happy with the 20,000 in the contingency reserve for earmarking. And on George Street, I would personally have gone for a figure like about 35k. I don't know if Councillor Kennedy accepts that rather than 30. I mean, at the moment, it's probably going to be 30. I think we should just have a little bit extra.
I like round figures, Ed. Gary.
40 then.
30 for George Street.
I was preferring 40, Chair.
Oh, 40, beg your pardon. Angela, would you support 40?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Right, any others? Any other proposals? So far I've got...
Can I just ask the clerk's opinion on the IT one?
Well, what I was going to do is going to go give all the proposals and then ask Delia to comment on all of them.
That's fine.
Okay. So if we're saying repairs and maintenance 50,000, climate change 50,000, IT 20,000, George Street 40,000. Is that what we're saying so far?
Yes.
Okay, Delia.
I think it depends how long you're looking at this this reserve for. I don't think we will spend 20,000 on IT in the next 2 years, but as the reserves are high and we want to avoid accumulating other reserves that we don't need, perhaps it does make sense to have 20,000 in IT, knowing that that's a longer term commitment.
I mean, we've transferred 160,000 so far from the general reserve to earmark reserves. Are there any more that anyone wants to consider? Delia, have you got a suggestion?
Not at the moment, no. I think we need to complete the piece, as has been said, we need to complete the maintenance, the piece of work on the maintenance and the much longer term planning. I mean, this isn't about what we're going to do this year or even necessarily next year. This is more about what we're going to do in five years, you know, what we're going to need to do in the next 5 years.
Okay.
10 years.
Ed?
I think we're probably right. I wouldn't want to put the whole of the 250 into earmarked reserves purely because of the situation that we are currently in. We don't know what our income is going to be in a year, later on this year or next year, as who knows what's going to happen with people's with council tax rates, because people are of people being less able to afford it and receiving discounts and all of that. So we don't quite know how that's going to impact our income. So I certainly wouldn't want to put the full 250 in that we've talked about. So I think probably 160 is probably the right amount.
Okay. Any other comments? Will you propose it, Ed?
I'll propose that.
Okay. I'll Angela. Second.
I'll second it. Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right.
So that's a recommendation to full council,
Full
Chair,
council, yeah.
and that will be considered next week.
Okay. Thank you. Now, do we go? Do members wish to go into restricted meeting?
Chairman, I think Councillor MacDonald wishes to speak.
Oh, did I miss you, Michael?
Yep, just a quick one there. I had some strange behaviour during that segment because I was getting visited by bugs, so I had to spray myself up and then I had to disappear because I moved my sinuses, spraying myself up to protect myself. So there would have been some strange behaviour. I just thought I'd give some explanation.
Chairman, if I could say with this next item, the reason that it's the papers are restricted is because they're commercially sensitive quotations. If you feel that you can discuss it without divulging the details of the quotations, there's no need to exclude the press and public. You just need to be a little bit careful about how you speak about it.
Well, provided we don't mention the prices, and we can mention the highest or lowest price. If you can do it on that basis, we can leave it open to the public section. So shall we do that? Leave it, Angela?
I would prefer on this particular item just to go in confidential would be my preference, because it's very difficult not to talk about the figures and everything involved.
Right, okay. Are all the other items on the agenda, would they all fall in part 2?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No. I mean, if you want to move this one further down the agenda, that's that would be an option, Chairman.
I propose that we do.
Yep, shall we do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you. Now 12, now quotations again, aren't they?
I propose that we move it down the agenda.
Seconded.
What about item 13? Can we discuss that?
I think so.
Yeah, the market stalls.
I think so.
Yes.
So shall we go to item 13?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we're still in public session. Right. Anyone want to speak on this? My own view is we go with the recommendation, but anyone wants to kick off? Ethan.
I just don't. So I agree with everything in this. I would just like to add that I don't think that we should go back to cash in the
Right.
future.
So in other words, the recommendation is not. So I think it's a very helpful report, I must admit. Anyone wants to come in, or do we want to take a vote on it? Go straight into the vote. Sorry, Ron.
Yeah, I recommend what we've got there for the simple reason paying cash now is out of date. It stops people being put in danger collecting money. You know, so I think we should go with this recommendation.
Delia, is there anything else you want to add before we take the vote?
It's Will's report. I don't know if Will's got anything he wants to say.
My apologies, Will. Over to you.
That's all right. No, I mean, if everyone is relatively happy with it, that's my recommendation is in the report there that you've got.
I like the report. I understood it and made it clear. Thank you very much for that. Any other suggestions? Any other comments? Sorry, that was made. Well,
Councillor O'Rourke and Councillor Hume seem to be indicating.
Ed?
I was going to say, I just haven't had under belly, but I was just going to really echo, I was going to say it before you said it, but I'm going to echo your comments. Councillor Ely, the report here is actually really well pulled together, and it's really clear on what the options are. So I just want to thank Will for that.
Right. Ron?
No, he's spoken. No.
Who wanted to come in? Sorry.
I think it was Councillor O'Rourke.
Oh,
Yeah, as long as it's not creeping, you know, they still use cash, don't we? And this end of town where there's really a lot of old people still love their cash. So I don't want it, you know, I know that the stallholders can pay by card, but I don't want it creeping into the customers. After all, the chemists are still taking cash.
Oh, it's purely the market stall.
I know that it is, but I'm on about mission creep, like, you know.
Okay. Ethan?
Yeah, just to come back on that point, and just for absolute clarity, to Councillor O'Rourke, I think that for me, it's not only the health and safety risk now, but you know, it costs more money for the council to process the cash. Someone's got to go to the bank, and I just think that if we're going to make this change, let's go and reduce our costs and make it easier for our accounting. Let's just do this once. And but of course, I think that those customers who need to pay for their items from the market in cash should, of course, be able to do so.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to clear.
Right. So, gentlemen, I put it to the vote that we accept the report and its recommendations. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you.
So with that in mind, Chairman, the intention is to put this into effect immediately so that the traders can come back as soon as they can supply us with their relevant paperwork and so on.
Yeah.
And we've had discussions with Milton Keynes Council, and it's been agreed that we're going to focus the existing traders on the area of pavement outside the post office. We've got a limited number of traders who are ready to return at the moment, and we feel that that's the safest place to put them. So that's the intention. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Right. Noted. Don't agree with it, but never mind. Right.
I'll stop.
Can we do item 15? Christmas
Yes.
report?
Yes, we can do 15.
Right. Do you want to lead on that one, Delia?
Yes, you've seen the report that's in the pack. Since I prepared the paperwork for the meeting, I've had a further email from Milton Keynes Council, which is asking us to consider the And then they've notified that the red columns indicated in the report are to be replaced with new columns, and that work is to start on Monday the 15th of June, so it should have started yesterday. The amber columns that have been notified in the report have been quoted for and sent through to Milton Keynes Council, and they've agreed that they will be programmed in and changed over the next 6 weeks. The stainless steel columns along the shop fronts in between Stanier Square and Elizabeth Chair have been checked by ILP, and although there are holes drilled in there and he's not happy for them to be used, they can be used for column mounted illuminations provided the size of the decoration doesn't exceed 0.3 meters squared. So that will ensure that we have all the columns that we used on Queensway previously available for some form of lighting display, but the displays themselves will need to be verified by Milton Keynes Council so that they conform to the spec and so on. So I think that goes some way towards allaying our concerns about the use of columns. And we will be able to, I think, as long as we get our act together and do it very quickly now, we will be able to go out to tender in time for a lighting display for 2020. But that will only help us with the lighting columns. We still have the issue to resolve of the use of the trees, and the fact that if we want to use the trees, even if Milton Keynes Council agree for us to use the trees, we will need to introduce specific electrical supplies at the base of the trees if we wanted to, say, hang mistletoe stars or put some kind of wrap around the tree. We would need some more infrastructure. So I think this is very good news, but we will still need to be just a little bit clearer about the specification, because I still don't know what the issue, what's actually going to be allowed in terms of the trees.
Yeah, as I understand it, they're saying that we've got to get a separate electrical feed to each of the trees if we want to put them in lighting.
Yes, they won't allow us to connect a tree to a lighting column. So if we want to use a tree, every time we want to use a tree, we've got to have a dedicated supply.
Which basically means we've got to dig through the root system to get something in there. It doesn't make sense. It really does not make sense.
And we've still got the issue that every column has to have a BSEN 40 test at a cost of £65 or thereabouts per column.
Okay, if that's the latest HSE guidance, yeah, okay, I can go with that. But I don't go with this tree business about where the electrical supply. I mean, is it worth our while trying to get a supply from a building adjacent and then supply from there? Can we supply between the trees?
I think it's this is me based on my personal past experience as a town clerk. Using a private supply is extremely time consuming and problematic. I'm not in favour of using a private supply. I would really prefer that we had a public supply, partly for health and safety reasons, partly because of the costs that are involved. The costs of administering a private supply are really difficult. It means that every single year you've got to go out and check with all the property owners whether or not they're willing, and it changes from year to year. You invest in infrastructure to use a private supply, and then that building owner's not keen the next year.
But I was suggesting that it's our private supply, not the private supply of the building, but we have a private supply onto the building with their agreement and supply onto the trees, and then catenary between the trees. It's our supply.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is the catenary. It's the catenary wire between the tree and a building. It may be more acceptable. I'd need to take advice on it. They certainly don't want a catenary wire between a tree and a column.
I can, yeah, okay. I don't understand it, but that's their route. So let's go from the, if we can get a supply from the building.
But I'm just concerned about the timescale involved in getting that kind of supply for this December. I mean, we talked at the last meeting about tree pits and putting in Christmas trees, and I've done some preliminary work on that.
Yeah. And
again, I'm very anxious about the timescale that's involved in terms of trying to get tree pits installed between now and this December. It's a real anxiety to me that we won't have the time to do it. As it is, I think we're pushing it in going out for tender. I mean, an alternative is, instead of going out for a formal tender for 3 years, is to do a sort of, as I mentioned last time, do something that's not a 3-year, a smaller contract, just for the 1 year, and then be ready to go out to tender next year.
Okay, I've got Ethan and Gary. Ethan?
I was going to say that I think that we should go with what we've got in terms of this report and all of the columns that are going to be replaced. I think that we need to be kind of getting our line in the sand now for Christmas, and we don't know when we're going to have a response about the trees. I think we should start planning on, even if it is a scaled back lighting this year. And I agree that I think that we should have a 1-year contract, give us, start the work around what is possible with the trees and any private supply, but actually with the agreement that would be if anything could change for next year, so that the team can just get on with doing whatever for Christmas this year.
Gary?
Simply back the town clerk with her experience of what the correct way ahead is. I think we should leave her alone on this. Take and not pushing, try this private company and that private company. Let the town clerk drive this situation, please. Thank you, Chair.
Eamon?
Yeah, I'm concerned about we had lampposts in Victoria Road condemned, and yet they're not on the red list. Isn't that rather strange?
I think they're not on the list because when I did the walkabout with Ringway, we agreed that they couldn't be used, and so they weren't included in the report. And Vicarage Road was included in the report as an alternative, as a way of taking the display up from Queensway all the way to Aylesbury Street. But yes, I hear exactly what you're saying. I think that's why they're not included in the report.
Okay. Ed?
I think we're in a much better state than we were a few weeks ago when we talked about Christmas lights. So the work that this has come through and the establishment of the structural issues with the columns is very, very useful to be able to see that, and what their programme of works is to replace and to agree to continue to use the Queensway ones. I think that's a really positive step, and I'm really pleased that we can do that. It's better than what we thought we were going to be dealing with. So whilst it may be less than last year, it's still better than what it was going to be a few weeks ago. So I think that I'm trying to put a positive spin on it. I think we need to just also be clear, if they're putting new lamp columns in, when they put the new lamp columns in, are they going to test them for the BSEN 40 standard? Because if they're putting them new in, then surely they should ensure that they are the standard when they put them in.
You would think, wouldn't you? I will check that with Ringway and see if they're prepared for the BSEN or whatever test they do at that stage, whether it will be close enough in time to the decoration going on the column for them to not require the test. But the information I've been given up to date is that the test has to be done in very close proximity in terms of time to when the column goes on the display. So I don't know the answer to that question. I'll have to find out.
Can I come back?
Wait a minute, Ed. Ron, then Eamon, then Ed.
Yeah, so this test, would we have to have that done every single year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Eamon?
The blue sockets that we plug the lighting into, who's paying for those?
We will, presumably.
We'll have to pay for all infrastructure because Ringway and Milton Keynes Council have no need of any of that infrastructure. So any infrastructure inside the column, we'll have to provide in the new column.
Can they replace the ones they took down by mistake? It was their fault, so they should really replace them.
I think that ship has sailed, Councillor O'Rourke, as we've discussed before, but I will be asking them to take out of the existing columns any infrastructure that's in there.
Yeah.
The last full council, we talked about the disparity in terms of information being given to other parish and town councils across Milton Keynes. Do we know whether there's been any change in that? Or do we know whether other councils are having to go through these tests?
I know that West Bletchley have just gone out to tender, and they have not mentioned BSEN 40 specifically in their tender, or at least I don't think they have. They've just asked everyone to work in conformity with the Milton Keynes Council code of practice. I know that there are other clerks who don't know anything about that test, and their Christmas lights have not been challenged in the same way, but I don't know what the condition of their columns are. I think there is confusion and different levels of understanding at different councils.
Eamon?
The lampposts in Wadden Way replaced the concrete lampposts in 1980 and late 70s. So we were told at the last meeting, discussed this, that any lampposts over 20 years old can't have any Christmas lights on them. So that counts, that scrubs Wadden Way completely, doesn't it?
I think what I said was that they said the lifetime of a lamppost was 20 to 25 years. That didn't mean that they couldn't have decorations on, but they would have to pass the BSEN 40 structural test, and the chances were that the older the stock, the less likely they were to pass the test.
Well, they're about 40 years old.
Okay, right. Angela, last one.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I haven't spoken before. I've been talking to Delia about this on a regular basis, and I think it is important that Milton Keynes has the same across all of the parishes and town councils. And it is highlighted to them that it needs to be done, because what could happen to other parishes is what happened to us last year, where they were saying that they could be removed. I think it's important that every parish and town council is treated the same, and we should highlight that to Milton Keynes Council, because we wouldn't want any parish to have what we had happen last year.
Right. Delia?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that Councillor Hume has done a lot of work with this, and I know as our representative at the Parishes Forum has been thinking of that this is something that might need to be referred to the Parishes Forum. And I'd also like to say that Councillor Rankin has also picked up this issue. Following your instructions at the last full council, I wrote to all our ward members in Milton Keynes, and Councillor Rankin did pick this up, and he has lobbied on our behalf. So I'm very grateful for that.
Right. So is there a proposal from anyone, please? Are we saying that we want the maximum permitted on columns, etc., that the clerk can negotiate, plus the trees, the Christmas trees as we agreed last time, again, as far as she can negotiate? Yeah?
No.
Is that, eh?
I think you should scrub the Christmas trees. Just have the one.
Well, we only agreed last meeting that we would have Christmas trees.
I can continue to explore that. I have already told the chair that we've had some feedback from colleagues in other councils. Christmas trees have been getting increasingly more expensive. There was a bit of a shortage last year, and it would appear that they're going to be even more expensive this year. So the tree that cost us £1,000 2 years ago is likely to cost us £3,000 this year. So I'm told, but I haven't verified that myself. That's based on local intelligence from colleagues. That's all.
That's basically what I'm saying, that we leave it to the judgment of the clerk to get what you can. Angela, is it something new?
It was for me to agree with you, Keith.
Wow. Oh, you're welcome to speak, Angela.
I was going to support you in what you were proposing there.
Okay. Right. Can we go to a vote on that? Delia, are you clear?
So are we going to go for a 1-year contract then this year? A 1-year contract using what we've got available to us to do the best we can do with what we've got available for 1 year. And I'll keep reporting back to you on how that goes and where we're at.
Yeah.
And also the progression on the other trees.
Right. On the trees, progression on the trees. Yeah.
And all those in favour of that proposal?
Yep.
That's Michael? No? Those against? Abstain? Michael, you're not?
I think he's frozen.
I think he's frozen. Yeah.
Oh. Well, we're saying that's carried. Thank you. Right, now I think that's the end of the items that we can discuss in open discussion. So is it your wish now we go to part 2 to exclude the public and press?
Second that.
Right, those in favour?
Yeah.
Where you gone, Eamon?
I don't know. The picture's gone and everything. No, there you go. No, it's all gone. Pictures.
Those against? Same. 1 abstention. Right, well that's agreed. So we go to part 2.
You can just bear with me, Chairman, while I stop the live streaming then.
Okay.